So that's the end of the informational items. At this time, I'd like to call upon Jim Hunt. Jim, would you please introduce our special guest?
I will, thank you. First of all, I want to welcome Jen Ulrich. She's a guest from the Vermillion Rotary Club, and Jen is our public relations extraordinaire for the district. And any of you who've received that beautiful uh, newsletter that we have produced out of the district, we thank Jen for that. That's her creation, and she works hard at that. So thank you, Jen, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.
Our special guest tonight, as you know, is Terry or Tyler. Tyler, I almost said Terry. Why would I say Terry? My son's name is Tyler.
I've been called a lot worse.
I
So
know. Tyler Stokesbary, and Tyler is the major gift officer with the Rotary Foundation. His territory is the Great Lakes region, which includes Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, parts of Pennsylvania and New York. So he has a large area that he has to take care of. Tyler's primary work to help donors achieve their philanthropic goals with major gifts defined by Rotary as a gift of $10,000 or more to the Rotary Foundations. And these can be outright, that would be your cash, or it can be planned gifts, which I'm sure Tyler's going to cover tonight. Tyler is a certified fundraising executive and holds a master's of public administration with a focus in nonprofit management. Prior to his present position at the Rotary Foundation, Tyler was the annual giving officer for Zones 30 and 31 and has worked at Rotary International since 2021. Tyler has been working in the nonprofit sector for more than 8 years, and Tyler's married with his wife, Melissa, and currently resides in northern Illinois, but originally hails from the great state of Iowa. Uh,
right.
Tyler's favorite part of his job is being part of so many Rotarians' philanthropic journeys. Please give a warm halfways welcome to Tyler.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jim. I appreciate that. Is the screen okay? Am I sharing it all okay? It's cool. I like
Yes.
presenting like this because I feel like it's easier to kind of see the PowerPoint and look at me talking, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. But okay, we'll get into this. So thanks again very much, Jim, for that, and Penny for that introduction as well. And thank you all for being you. You guys are an awesome club. I hear, I'll tell you, I've heard about your guys' club for probably 4 years now. I think Jim and Sue couldn't stop talking about how awesome this club is, and it's an honor that I get to see you all in person. And so, yeah, Jim went over my, introduction there, so I don't really need to say more about that other than this is my dog Walter. So I'm so happy that you have. I love that idea, by the way, your January meeting. Such a great idea. I feel like I'm sure it's probably challenging being an online club to find ways to connect with one another. But honestly, I feel like everybody has that same problem, right? Like whether you meet in person or online, if you don't make the effort to get to know one another, then you're not going to have that chance. So I love that you guys are doing that. um so uh Also, if you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand virtually or otherwise, and hopefully I'll be able to see you and listen to your question. Again, this is going to be a presentation, but I hope you'll see it as more of a conversation than that. But with any time I talk about anything relating to the Rotary Foundation, I like to talk about the mission statement. And you can read it here, but specifically, I like to focus on the very first part of that sentence. And that's the Rotary Foundation helps Rotary members. And then I like to sum it up by saying basically do good in the world. It essentially outlines their areas of focus, but I like to say the Rotary Foundation helps Rotary members do good in the world. And what I like to focus on is the Rotary Foundation is simply a vehicle for Rotarians to do good in the world. The Rotary Foundation is a vehicle for Rotarians to do good in the world. The Rotary Foundation is not going out and doing the projects, around the world or in your community. It's Rotarians, right? Again, with if we use the analogy of the Rotary Foundation being a vehicle, that vehicle only goes as far as there's gas in it, which would be like the funding, right? Or the driver. Because no Rotary Foundation project, no district grant or global grant happens unless there's a Rotarian on the other end of that dollar. Simply doesn't happen. I think that's pretty cool that you can have, there's not many organizations where you can give to and that on the other end of your dollar is someone who knows the four-way test the same as you do. They may not speak English, it may not be in English, but they know the four-way test and they believe they have the same values. And again, we cannot do projects without Rotarians on the other end of those dollars. So I like to start out by prefacing that again, when we say the Rotary Foundation, yes, that's its legal name, but it's our foundation. And I hope throughout the course of this presentation that you'll understand why that's important. I also like to do a little bit of a humble brag about our 4-star Charity Navigator rating. So how many of you are familiar with Charity Navigator? Okay, a good amount. Okay, so yeah, Charity Navigator. I encourage you to look up the Rotary Foundation or any nonprofit for that matter. They should be on Charity Navigator. We have all of our information on there. So again, I encourage you to look it up. We've had it for the past 16 years. And you see that number there says 88% of funds are spent on program awards and operations. To give you an idea, so that's basically 88 cents of every dollar goes towards the actual impact. To give you an idea of where a regular like nonprofit stands, if you can reach that 70% mark, that's pretty good. Or at least it's average. It's not great, it's not terrible. It's 70%. If the more you can get above that, the better. I think the Red Cross, again, you can look this up, but I want to say they're at around like 83 or 84%. It fluctuates year to year. But the other thing is with the Red Cross, they have paid staff members that are largely doing a lot of their programs, whereas most of we're not paying any staff members to do the actual programs. It's all volunteers. So that obviously, helps us get higher there. And speaking of staff members, anybody have, maybe type it in the chat or whatever, any guess about how many staff members work out of the US office? Anybody have a guess? Any guesses at all?
837.
837. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? It's okay. I won't make fun of you, or at least not in front of your face. Okay. Well, normally I love getting all the guesses because they're usually all over the place. But it's actually about 500. 500 work out of the U.S. office. There's about 700 total. I know there's people from all over the world in this club. We have so there's the world headquarters that's in Evanston, but then we also have other headquarters all around the world. So we have headquarters in South Korea, Japan, Australia, India, Brazil, and Zurich. So that's where all of the various headquarters are at. And so it's about anywhere from 600 to 700 worldwide. So fun fact, a lot of people don't know that. Okay, the next question is, how many of you know what annual fund share is? How many people know how annual fund share works? Okay, less hands. Now, I'm going to ask a different question. How many people know how Paul Harris works? More hands. Okay, interesting. I've adjusted how I ask this question because I think it's important to talk about annual fund share, because largely as a major gifts officer, as Jim mentioned, so I focus on gifts of $10,000 or more. I largely focus on the endowment, although I don't exclusively focus on the endowment. I believe that in order to understand anything that I'm about to talk about tonight, you have to understand how annual fund share works. And most Rotarians don't understand how the share system works, which is a testament to the Rotary Foundation and Rotarians, in that Rotarians will more or less blindly support the Rotary Foundation and have no idea what they're actually giving to. Or they'll call it Paul Harris, which isn't an actual fund. That's not a thing. Now Paul Harris Fellow recognition is a thing, which can be earned with donations to the annual fund or Polio Plus, but annual fund share is a very specific thing. And so, and I know I guess I'm kind of covering up part of the graphic here, but the uh, so the way annual fund share works, to put it very simply, if you give $100 to annual fund share, it gets invested for 3 years. Then it gets split. 47.5% goes to the World Fund, and the World Fund helps. It's at the trustee's discretion. We have to raise $50 million every year for Polio Plus to get the 2-to-1 Gates match. If we don't raise 50 million, we don't get the match. And obviously, if we don't get the match, then the Gates Foundation will probably be less likely to support us in the future, right? I mean, that only makes sense. Sometimes we're a few million short of our goal of raising 50 million, and then that gets the World Fund dollars come in and kind of top us off to 50. Okay. So that's partially what World Fund does. It also supports global grants, which I believe this club has been a part of many global grants. So if you have a global grant, the World Fund will match a global grant 80%. So again, for sake of math, if you have a $100,000 global grant, it'll do an 80% match, and then it becomes a $180,000 global grant. Again, that's just an example for math's sake. And then finally, it'll support Rotary Peace Centers. So we have Rotary Peace Centers all over the world, which have peace fellows who are earning certificates or master's degrees in peace building and conflict resolution. And that's basically what World Fund does. The other 47.5% goes towards district designated funds, or DDF. That gets split between district grants, which are like the local community grants, for District 6600. So that would be there, or district grants can also go around the world too, but largely district grants are in your community. And then global grants are those bigger projects, like I talked about, at least 30,000 minimum. You have to have 2 different countries. You have to have a host country and a partner. Again, you guys probably know this more than most clubs, but and then the remaining 5% goes to operations. So that's where the whole pie gets allocated. Does that make sense to everybody? How annual fund share works? That makes sense. Awesome. Cool. Great. That's the hardest part of this whole thing. So from here on out, it's easy. One thing I like to point out is all of the district grants that have, and these are just 3 of the, I think, it's 20 some, it could be 29. I want to say district grants that you guys have all done this Rotary year. And these are just 3 clubs that I picked at random, but these are just an example of how Rotary basically plugs into the community. Again, not mentioning global grants or anything like that. One thing that I like to point out, especially if you look at the Maumee Rotary Club, their overall thing is, they're providing gifts up to 150 children, including at least 20 bicycles. And what I like to highlight is how, you can have these big corporate foundations or these huge foundations. They're not giving out $2,000 or like $1,000 or $500, because the point of those corporate foundations is to be in the newspaper, right? Sorry, but that ain't going to get you in the newspaper. But where Rotary really thrives is, the difference of Rotary between a working food pantry or not is a working refrigerator. Now, fixing that refrigerator may only cost $500, $1,000. But if they don't have the money, it's not going to happen, right? And so that's where those district grants just really come into critical play. Or again, using that mommy example, I mean, imagine giving the gift of Christmas or just yeah, I guess in this instance it's Christmas, but any holiday. Imagine giving the gift of Christmas to 150 kids. Like, I mean, yeah, it's $2,000, but you can't put a price on that. I'm sorry. Like you just can't do that. But that's what Rotary is able to do. And that's what you guys are able to do because this is your guys' district. This is your district. So again, just something to think about. I like to touch on again what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the Rotary Foundation. I'm talking about the endowment. I'm talking about the overall, the reason why I was in District 6600 2 weeks ago now. I was driving all over the that part of the state for 6600, visiting all different clubs and that kind of stuff. Is because District 6600 has the goal to raise $1 million for this Rotary year. Okay, $1 million. Now that's in planned and outright gifts, so a bequest and cash gifts. They want to raise $1 million. Now, the reason why I don't lead off with that is because I mean, if somebody came to my Rotary Club and said we need the district to raise $1 million, I'd be like, what does that have to do with me? Like, why should I care? And I hope even just the little bit that I've shown so far that this shows why you should care, not because of the $1 million, but because of what those dollars can do. And I'll go in a bit more detail explaining about exactly what those dollars can do. But yes, the goal is to raise $1 million, but I firmly believe it's not really about the goal, it's about the impact. It's what it can do. So just, kind of keep that in mind. But these are just, again, 3 examples out of like 20 plus examples for just 1 year. And this happens every year, which is pretty incredible. And again, this doesn't even touch on the global grants. Again, I touched on that I largely focus on endowment giving. The main, I'd say, philosophical difference between annual giving or annual fund and endowment giving, both are equally important for different reasons. So the way I think of it is, so annual giving is more giving out of like your wallet or your checkbook or your credit card. Like I'm in Rotary Direct, so it's just recurring credit card. I get an email once a month that says thank you, and it goes to the fund that is special to me that I've chosen. And Polio Plus. We just had World Polio Day a few weeks ago. I support both, right? And I don't really think too much of it. It's not that it doesn't matter. It's just it doesn't hurt, me financially when I give, or it's not something I really think about. Whereas endowment giving, unlike an annual gift that gets used immediately, endowment giving lasts in perpetuity. It's a legacy kind of a gift. That's why we call it a legacy campaign, is because it's something that lasts, it outlasts you, it outlasts everything. It lasts in perpetuity. And now you could technically give a major gift, which again the Rotary Foundation defines as $10,000 or more. And I should say that the idea behind this $1 million campaign is through major gifts. So this isn't including annual fund share donations or anything like that. This is just, or not including gifts to annual fund share under 10,000 is what I should say. Because you could give a major gift. You could give $100,000 in cash to annual fund share if you really wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it because it gets used up in 3 years' time, and then the district will kind of like they're seeing the regular kind of funds that they usually get every year, and then there's like a hump of like, oh my gosh, we got all of this money came, and then it kind of goes back to normal. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you could do it if you want to. So a lot of what I'm talking about are recommendations, but ultimately it's whatever you want to do. And when we talk about endowment giving, you know, it's just like any university endowment, right? And I was gonna make an Ohio State joke. But I figured maybe I shouldn't poke that bear. I'm a Iowa Hawkeye fan, so I don't really have too much to say. But I'm interested to see what the spread is going to be versus Indiana on you guys. Again, Iowa is just 5 points, so just saying. We're not talking about the SEC, Bart. Get out of here. Come on, get out of here. I'm kidding. Just kidding. Uh, um, sorry, I got sidetracked. But so with endowment giving, basically the idea with endowment giving is it's essentially a testament of everything that you've built up in your lifetime. It's essentially a testament to everything you worked for in your lifetime. And again, you could give it to the annual fund, you could give it to Polio Plus if that's something that you're really passionate about, and if you are, I encourage you to give to it. But for something that is a testament of your lifetime, I think it's worthy of living in perpetuity. Does that make sense? Like how there's like two kind of ways of thinking about giving. Um, so again, that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the endowment versus annual giving. Some people are like, "Oh, so does that mean I should stop doing my annual fund share gift?" It's like, no, ideally you'd be able to do annual fund, share, Polio Plus, and endowment giving if you're in a position to do so. Not some people are not in, it's not the right time for them to make a major gift, whether it's an outright gift or a planned gift. There was a gentleman in I think it was the Mommy Rotary Club. One of his happy dollars, his happy, buck, was that his daughter was going dress shopping, I think, in Chicago for wedding dress shopping in Chicago or something, because they were getting engaged. And I was like, because that inevitably always happens, where some dad, has a daughter who's getting engaged as like a happy buck. It works out perfectly every time because I get to make a joke of, guess who's not going to be making a cash gift anytime soon? It's that guy, because he's got a dress to pay for and probably a wedding to at least partially or mostly pay for. He is not in a position to make a cash gift. Or maybe your kids graduated college and they've got good jobs and they're set up, and you're looking at your will. That's perfect timing. But maybe you won't get around to it for another few years, or who knows. What I'm trying to say is everyone is at a different path or a different part in their Rotary philanthropic journey, or just their philanthropic journey in general. It doesn't have to be Rotary. I'm here to hopefully help you through that journey and answer any questions that you might have. The other thing that I'm want to talk about in terms of why does it matter, the impact of endowment fund share, and hopefully you can see the numbers here, but the so from endowment fund share, they earn the spendable earnings. And from that, you can see it's $8,205. So at the start, and I'm going to get a little technical here, but I promise it's worth it. So at the start of the Rotary year, you all got about $8,000, or a little bit more than $8,000 from endowment fund share dollars that already exist to district designated funds. Okay. You guys, I think, raise about $200,000 a year through annual fund share donations, which equates to about $100,000 in DDF. So you get $100,000 in district designated funds from an annual fund share, and then you get an additional $8,200 from DDF, from the endowment fund share. So the way I like to explain it is, imagine you're running a 400-meter race, and annual fund share is 400 meters. At the start of each Rotary year, the district has to start all over again. And it's got to raise 200,000 to just do the same amount of district grants that you did last year. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it's less. And you have to do less district grants than you would have liked to. But, imagine you could do more. This endowment fund share, what it essentially allows you to do is, instead of starting at the 0 meter, the start line, you start at the 50-meter line. And then you know, just to raise that 200,000 that you raised previously, you have to raise just a little bit less. Now that's kind of a bad example because ideally you're still running the full 400 meters and you can do more. To give you an example, there's a district in Pittsburgh, and they actually just wrapped up a campaign this last year. Actually, it was a year ago. But they've been very strong with the endowment. Actually, I think Jim and Sue actually know a few of the people that made that district as strong as they are, actually. And they start the year July 1 with $83,000 in endowment fund share DDF. $83,000. And they also raise about $200,000 in annual fund share every year. So they're pretty much the same exact as you guys, except instead of starting at the start line, they're starting at the 400-meter line, or maybe the 350-meter line. But they're not stopping at 400. They're running another whole 400. Does that make sense? Does endowment fund share and maybe why it matters kind of make sense? There are other funds that you could support should you want to. But if I were to explain all of the various funds and ways to support them, we would be here like all night, and I don't think anybody wants that. So if you have any questions about any of these funds, please just let me know, and I'd be happy to talk through them with whatever you're passionate about. But just something I use endowment fund share just to try and explain why this matters, how it works. Here's another actual example of how a named endowed fund works. So a named endowed fund with the Rotary Foundation, it's a minimum of a $25,000 donation. That can be done through cash or it can be done through a planned gift. You can see, so somebody gave, or it's kind of small, so hopefully you can, but somebody gave a $25,000 gift in, in this example, it's 1990, did I choose? Yeah, 1995. So it's a 30 years ago that somebody made this gift of $25,000. Over that 30-year period, the spendable earnings that have generated off of this gift is almost doubled to 48,000, and then the market value, or what it's grown to, is about 40,000. So that $25,000 gift over a 30-year period almost doubled its impact, versus if it would have been given right then it would have been used up almost immediately, which again would have done good in the world when it was needed most right at the time. But because it was allowed to grow and being an endowment, it's done more impact over time. And of course, this will exist for another 30 years and another 30 years after that and another 30 years after that, and it'll just continue to grow and do more impact. So that's an example of that. These are the other, this isn't even all of the different areas that you could support if you wanted to restrict your gift to an area of focus. And then I'll kind of briefly talk about the actual how to make a gift, because I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions. But basically there's kind of two broad categories: outright or bequest. Outright being, again, like cash, actual money in the door, versus a bequest, which is naming the Rotary Foundation as a beneficiary of a retirement plan, or in your will or estate, or a life insurance, policy, or whatever. However, lots of different ways. For outright gifts, this kind of goes into more detail. We can accept appreciated stocks. So if you have stocks that, if you were to sell them, would have a lot of capital gains, you can just give that as a charitable gift instead and bypass that. Again, for all of this stuff, talk with your financial advisor, accountant. Don't listen to me. I am not the person you should ever go to for financial advice. I bought a slushy machine a month ago. Well, it was like 2 months ago now. It was a great decision. I don't think it was a good financial decision. But so again, don't listen to me. But at 70.5, you can do a qualified charitable distribution from your IRA if you have one. At 73, you have to do a required minimum distribution, which can be satisfied with a QCD. Again, for a lot of this stuff, Some of it won't mean anything to you, and some of it you're like, oh yeah, I got to do my RMD soon. I need to figure out, or your tax person in January will be like, okay, clock's ticking. All of them can be used with a pledge, and for Rotary, a pledge is a $10,000 cash gift over a minimum 10,000 over a maximum of 3 years. So for example, that named endowed fund of 25,000, let's say that's not in the cards to do that large of a cash gift, you could divide that by 3, and let's say you could do a 10,000 one year, 10,000 another year, and then 5,000 another year. That'd be 25,000. That would be a way to do it. Once you do the first third of your gift, it counts as the full amount of the gift. And then, like I said, deferred gifts or planned gifts, naming the Rotary Foundation your will or estate, pretty self-explanatory. There's this form that you would fill out that I can walk you through on basically letting Rotary know about this kind of gift. We don't need to substantiate any gift that's under $1 million. If it's over $1 million, we do. Otherwise, four-way test, we trust that you've done what you're saying you're doing, and that's it. There are some more complicated gifts. I'll tell a very brief story. The gifts of tangible personal property. Being an IO boy, there was a very brief moment in time where the Rotary Foundation was in possession of bushels and bushels of corn, because an Iowa farmer, instead of just selling it directly to the co-op, he didn't need the profits from the harvest. So he had transferred possession of the corn to the Rotary Foundation, and then the Rotary Foundation then sold that corn to the co-op. But for a very brief period of time, Rotary was in possession of just a boatload of corn, which again, as an Iowa boy, makes me really happy. There are various levels of recognition, both outright and commitment, which will be on the next slide here. But there's major donor, and then Arch Clump Society, and then going into this is the Bequest Society, which is again is planned gift, and then Legacy Society, which is a planned gift of over $1 million as well. That is all that I have. I want to stop share. Hopefully I haven't gone over time or anything, or I haven't stepped on anything. Okay, cool. Again, I went through a lot of material in a relatively short amount of time. Again, I can and have talked about this for hours on end, but again, I won't subject you all to that. So if there is time for questions, I would be happy to take any, or even just comments from people. Always happy to hear.
We definitely have time.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Are there any questions or comments for Tyler?
Where in Iowa are you from, Tyler?
I am from so it's a place called Nevada, Iowa, which is pronounced Nevada, but it's spelled exactly like Nevada, and it's about 10 miles from Ames or Iowa State. Even though I'm an Iowa fan, my wife is an Iowa State fan, so that time of year becomes a little tricky for us if you know anything about that rivalry. Are you
All right, I'm
familiar
from
with?
Waterloo.
Okay, all right, very nice, very nice, very nice.
Okay, my question is about the bequest.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that Rotary benefits from the promise of money
Yeah,
down the road?
excellent question, and thank you for bringing it up. So, honestly, the tangible benefit is relatively minimal. Other than the fact that it allows us to steward our donors, like that's the only tangible benefit, I guess, is that you're for us that you're cultivating or stewarding that relationship over a long period of time, so you don't like lose the gift or whatever. But really, the benefit largely resides with the donor. And what I mean by that is, if you name the Rotary Foundation in your will or estate, or as a beneficiary or whatever, one, that allows us to thank you, whether publicly or privately. Again, if you want to be anonymous or whatever, that's totally fine. Or even if you don't want to be anonymous, but you don't want a big, hoopla or whatever, I still want to thank you personally for your commitment. But two, and most importantly, is by letting the Rotary Foundation know that, you know, you've named us in your estate, it also allows me as a gift officer to have a conversation with you about where you want your money to go towards. And if you want to set up a named endowed fund to honor someone. So this district actually experienced this, unfortunately. I unfortunately use your guys as a example a lot because it's kind of tragic. Uh, Someone passed away in this district and left the Rotary Foundation $100,000. $100,000. So Deb Cheney, who's the district Rotary Foundation chair, she called me and she's like, "This person left us $100,000. Where is it supposed to go?" And so I look him up in our database, and he never told us. Never told us. So he may have been passionate about his district, and maybe it should have gone to share, or maybe he was passionate about the environment, and it could have been restricted to the environment area focus or peace, or who knows. We'll never know. And and I don't think he had any surviving family, so we couldn't ask them either. And in the event that we don't know, it defaults to the World Fund, which, you know, as we've discussed, it's not a bad thing. It does a lot of great things. It does everything we need it to, but maybe that's not what the donor was passionate about. And unfortunately, we'll never know. Um, so again, to kind of answer your question, there's there's minimal tangible benefit for us, but there's a lot of tangible benefit for the donor because then it allows the donor to actually tell us what they want to do with it. And also, again, regardless of whether you support the Rotary Foundation through this campaign, as a Rotarian, you know, we haven't met for very long, but as a friend, even if you don't support the Rotary Foundation, consider having these real estate plans with your family. Again, even if you don't support the Rotary Foundation, just not real estate plans with your family. Um, so you have that conversation because unfortunately, in my job, I see the I see what happens when those conversations don't happen. I had a donor. She frantically emailed me. She was not a Rotarian. She was the daughter of a donor, a Rotarian who had passed, and she emailed me frantically, and everybody in the district, and then the district included me in because I had worked with the district. And she said, my father had left. I think it was like 10,000 or maybe even less than that to the Rotary Foundation, but I don't know if that meant his club or the district or Rotary International. Now she included a keyword of like the will says the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International, and usually if you put that, you mean us. But thankfully, I was able to look up her dad's profile, and in 1997, he submitted a form saying that he wanted his commitment to go to endowment fund share, and she had to go to like court the next year next day or like probate or whatever. And this happened like a week ago, like I was or 2 weeks ago. I was literally on the road in your guys' district, and I was able to, you know, tell her, hey, I don't know if you know, if anything changed, but back in 1997 this is what he wanted to do, and that gave her the peace of mind to move forward and have the stuff that she needed. So again, that's just a example of why it's important to have these conversations. Again, regardless of whether or not you support the Rotary Foundation, support a different charity, as long as you take care of yourself and your family, that's what I care about. That's a long way of answering your question, Jen. I hope that satisfied it.